In 1997, TriStar Pictures released a science fiction action film called Starship Troopers. It was based off of the 1959 novel of the same name by Robert Heinlein.
Heinlein's career had largely been in opposition to fascism, having fought with the Allies as a soldier himself against the Axis powers. However, his writing has garnered some confusion, criticism, and debate among readers and interpreters of his work.
The novel was a controversial work, and his personal riposte to leftists calling on President Dwight D. Eisenhower to stop nuclear testing in 1958. The Patrick Henry ad shocked him, he wrote many years later of the campaign. Starship Troopers outraged him.
Starship Troopers is a coming-of-age story about duty, citizenship, and the role of the military in society. The book portrays a society in which suffrage is earned by demonstrated willingness to place society's interests before one's own, at least for a short time, and offer under onerous circumstances in government service. In the case and point of the protagonist, this was military service.
Fast forward to 1997, where Dutch director Paul Verhoeven has taken what is largely considered a very straightforward story and brought it to screen as satire. Verhoeven's film, which is also often misunderstood, takes a stance against war, the military, and fascism.
The film, though different than the novel, was controversial in its own right. The imagery used by Verhoeven is purposely evocative. The call to duty advertisements, reminiscent of German film director Leni Riefenstahl, are intentionally littered throughout the film. The casting of attractive actors to fight for this utopian dream was no accident either.
Would you like to know more?
It's important to distinguish the difference between parody and satire before moving forward. Parody is a humorous or exaggerated imitation of a writer or genre done for comic effect, while satire tends to use humor, irony, exaggeration, and ridicule to expose and criticize stupidity, particularly in the context of politics and other topical issues.
The deliberate intertwining of military and political propaganda and media would lend itself towards Starship Troopers being a satire and not a parody.
Starship Troopers is often criticized for its lead-in story, where the melodramatic relationships of high school students dominate the first half of the film. Johnny likes Carmen, but Dizzy likes Johnny. Johnny is a football player, but so is Xander, who Johnny beats in the championship game. Carmen joins the military to be a pilot. Johnny follows her and can only be a grunt. Xander is also a pilot. Johnny and Dizzy end up in the same unit, and so on.
Without this backstory, the A-plot would not work quite as well. By the second half of the film, we are extremely familiar with our protagonists because we know where they came from, what their motivations are, and why their choices matter. The love triangle plays out in a series of altercations that take a back seat once these characters are caught up within the war.
Would you like to know more?
The war is with a race of insects, disrespectfully referred to as bugs. They are from a planet called Klendathu on the far side of the Milky Way, roughly 20,000 light years from Earth.
The bugs have been launching asteroids towards planet Earth that the Terran Federation, that's Earth Space Forces, have been able to stop up until they weren't.
The war is in full swing after a successful attack on Earth. Our lead characters, one of whom had been reluctant to stay with the program, are all fully engaged now, and they want revenge for the terrible loss of life inflicted.
It all seems very straightforward. The fleet soldiers fight in space away from the dangers that the foot soldiers face on the ground. A danger that is an enemy that is extremely fast, deadly, and has a crippling advantage in numbers. Can the Space Marines exterminate the bug threat and save the Terran Federation? Don't leave that chair.
Would you like to know more?
Welcome to Popped. I'm Daniel Hendricks, your host, and here with me are my co-hosts, Ben Wilson and Tanya Holstrom. Hello, guys.
Hi, guys. Hello, Daniel. Hello, Ben.
How you guys doing tonight?
Hello. Doing okay.
Yeah? You guys excited that we're going to get to talk about Starship Troopers tonight?
Yes.
So excited.
Don't hold us back. I know
You can
it
feel
looks scary.
the excitement.
It's okay. It'll be fine. We won't explode. It's cool.
Would you like to know more?
I would love to know more.
Well,
Please.
you will, but first first we have to get to our little intro here. And we're going to do our segment called Popped Mail. Why? Because
Yay!
we got one email since the last time I read emails. And admittedly, this is a good email, so I'm going to go ahead and give it to you here. The Lorax at lorax.com says, love watching this show on YouTube. Your best shows so far are Blade Runner and The 13th Warrior. Well, thank you for that. The Island was funny because I liked that film too, but don't consider it good. My question is for Tanya. What is your favorite thing on the bookshelf behind you?
Wow. Couple of things. Thank you for watching. And the Loraxes,
You're welcome.
were those
Oh, you
the
mean him?
ones? Yes. Thank you, Lorax. Were those the Seuss characters with the stars on their bellies? Was that the Loraxes, or am I thinking of something else?
He's the guy with the walrus mustache who spoke for the
Oh,
trees.
Nutburgers. Oh my God, you're right.
The
Oh my God.
environmentalists.
I need to brush up on my Seuss, apparently.
I think this is the first time
Okay.
I've heard the word nutburgers. I like that.
Oh my gosh. Really? I feel like I say it all the time. It's
Sounds
gonna be
really
it's gonna
unappetizing.
be a thing. I am gonna make it rip across the internet. It's gonna be the new phrase that everybody says.
Yay.
In any case, thank you for the question. Probably in terms of tchotchke, I have a picture of my mama right there. She passed away in 2020. But next to her, I have Ganesh holding a lollipop. Yeah, there was one day a long time ago where I was like, I think I want the universe to bring me a lollipop. And then some rando person, I got a lollipop. And so that's the lollipop that I got. And so now Ganesh holds it for me. And then my favorite book is Joseph Campbell Companion, which I got from a friend of mine when I was 18, and I try to read it every year. It's fabulous. It resets my brain cells. Yes.
Right on.
Thanks for the question. That's awesome.
There you go, Lorax, if that's your real name.
And now I have to put some Dr. Seuss stuff on my bookshelf, apparently.
You cynic.
In other news,
I think that's totally his real name.
You think it is?
Yeah.
Good for you.
And
Ben.
I think you are tragically cynic, Daniel.
Tragic is probably the word I'd use. Moving on, we have a new Patreon subscriber. And anybody who watched our Island episode, the Island episode, will know who that subscriber is because he co-hosted with us. So thank you, Eric Chung, for being a top tier subscriber. He didn't just subscribe, he went to the top tier.
Wow.
And yay.
When you do that, you get to be a guest host on the show, which he already was. So we're going to have him join us as soon as we're done doing this. We're going to be doing our Patreon episode. Fittingly, Eric will be co-hosting on that. So if you would like to be a co-host on our show, all you have to do is become a top tier subscriber. We don't tell you have to do that. We don't tell you have to support us at all. But if you choose to, you get all kinds of cool things on Patreon, like stickers, mugs. You get a shout out on the show, just like Eric just did. And if you support us well enough, you get to come on and be a co-host. Don't you want to do that? Don't you want to be with us?
We're amazing. Trust us.
Yeah. Did I overplay that? All right. Anyway, if you want to support us, head on over to Patreon. And what's next? Oh, there's spoilers ahead. Yeah, the movie's from 1997. So if you haven't seen it, tough luck. I mean, no, you should probably go watch the film before you watch or listen to this, whichever format you're choosing to participate in this episode on. And with that said, let's talk about Starship Troopers. I feel like I'm doing the script again.
There's
Right?
the name of the episode.
Starship
Troopers.
Let's talk about Starship Troopers. Wow. All right. As always, like, subscribe, share, and probably the most important thing is interact. We absolutely love when you comment on our YouTube page or on our Facebook page. It gives us a chance to talk directly to you. And if you attend one of our premieres, you can talk to us on live chat while the episode's on. And Yes, do that. Is that good?
It's fun.
All right. Anyway, back to whatever I called it before, Starship Troopers. Um, so I'm going to tell you guys where I think I first saw Starship Troopers and my background with it, and then I'd like to hear yours as well. I am 99% certain I did not see this in the theater. In fact, I'm pretty sure it was one of those things that was sitting around in a video store. Remember those things? No, Blockbuster Video. Tanya, didn't you used to work in one?
I worked at Super Duper Video.
Ooh.
It was such a great job. I gotta say, I loved it. It was like the perfect 90s job.
I mean, that name implies that all the other video stores are underperforming or were underperforming. But yeah, it was in one of those places. I remember wandering around. I think it was Hollywood Video at the time, and I used to just kind of wander around like a zombie, looking at different titles, thinking, "What do I want to watch this weekend?" And Starship Troopers, I'm sure it caught my eye, especially with that cool cover. And I remember taking it home, and I probably missed the point of the film back then. I just liked it because it was a sci-fi, bug squash fest. Only as years had gone on and I rewatched it did I start to catch all the nuance and the satire. I don't know why I didn't get it the first time around, but I'm pretty certain that I didn't. How about you guys? Ben, what was your experience and when did you first hear about Starship Troopers?
Well, similar to you, I did not see it at first in the theaters. By the time I found my way to it, it was already in video. And I don't remember where I was, who I was watching it with, or what year it was. I want to say my early 20s, maybe. Found this movie and watched it, and I liked it okay. And I absolutely, definitely recognized personalities from that matched the kids that I had grown up with. And my emotional reaction to the film was reacting to, shall we say, baggage from my past. But I liked the film overall, and I definitely did see its commentary on the ideas of both war and supranationalism and fascism and squishing bugs. Very important social.
Absolutely. I mean, isn't that the most important thing? Squishing bugs?
It's the only thing.
Tanya, when and where did you hear about Starship Troopers first, and what's your experience with it?
So I actually saw it in the theater, and I think I saw it.
Wow, one of the 10.
Hey, no, dude. Okay, so I've always been into sci-fi. The majority of my, from teen years on, it was kind of my jam. So I was very excited when it came out. So I either saw it opening weekend, opening week. I really enjoyed it in the theater and definitely caught the not so subtle barbs towards fascism and the like as I watched the film. But on later watches, I actually watched it. This is a true story. Speaking of video stores, I watched it on this last viewing right before our episode on a VHS tape that I purchased at Hollywood Video when they went out of business. There was one summer, and it must have been like the early 2000s. We drove like all around the valley to every Hollywood Video we can find and just bought a bunch of videos. But anyway, that's the point. So yes, VHS rules. Yeah, but definitely on this last watching, there was more that I picked up on. But it was noticeable. I'm sorry, I'm sick, y'all. So I'm not. I am not, like, my brain is not working as well as it normally does, which is also not that good. So I apologize for my rambles.
You're always sick, but this time you're physically sick.
So funny.
So yeah, it's interesting because both you guys seem to catch on your first watch the pointed criticism of fascism and all that, and for me it was just an action film when I first watched it. I think I was in college and I was probably drinking or something when I watched it, not really paying attention to the nuance of the film. But as time went by, and I did buy it on DVD, I watched it multiple times, and it became clearer and clearer to me that this is definitely a satire piece. It's a hit piece on fascism. It's a hit piece on war and the military, and it's pretty cool. The fact that, I mean, it kind of bugs me that I didn't catch it the first time through, but I guess it's understandable, as like my mind probably just wasn't there at the time. But
Does it bug you, Daniel?
it bugs me.
It bugs you.
I'm so Clendathu'd. But the whole idea of the totalitarian fascist state where only the citizens can vote, and to be a citizen you have to be in the military. You know, there are places on this planet now that you have to serve in the military. You have to serve in the military. It's part of your growing process. I don't know that it's necessarily bad, but considering the statement about the military in this film, one could go down that road. How do you guys feel about the way that was done, and what do you think? I mean, do you feel like having mandatory military service would be good or bad, or do you just not care? Ben, how do you feel about it? I know you've been in the military, so you know that might alter your take on this.
It does inform my take on this, and for a long time now, my firm opinion on this matter is having a mandatory term of duty, specifically in the military, would be a spectacularly terrible idea. There are people who would not do well at all in any portion of the military, and that would make things far more difficult for the military to operate effectively. I do, however, like the idea of a mandatory term of service to the people of the nation.
I like that.
I don't think that it should be mandatory for it to be military. There are so many areas in non-military civic life where people could spend 2 years working at a role that serves the nation.
I would tend to agree, because if you think about, let's just use another film, for example, like Full Metal Jacket. Not everybody goes in the military, should be in the military, or can handle even, what is it, boot camp? Right. Think about the people that would wash out and how it would damage their psyche to have to go through that when they don't have the, what's the word I'm looking for? The stamina or the constitution to either mentally or physically deal with that type of abuse. So I would tend to agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Tanya, how do you feel about the whole idea of forced military service?
Well, I probably, from if you watch this podcast and previous comments that I've made, I'm not really a fan of that. I think that with most governments being as bat poop insane as they are currently, the military is probably a scary place to be at this place in time. I also don't even know if I'm okay with what Ben said about the mandatory, like, work at this thing for the government or whatever. I think that in the UK, I think Sunak was actually talking about doing something like that. Not necessarily military. It could be the National Health Service or something like that. I don't know if I'm a fan of that either, honestly. I don't think that you should have to serve. I mean, that is kind of serving to be a citizen in a way, and isn't that what we're saying is not a good thing, even if it's not military service? I don't know. I sort of take issue with that a bit.
Well, yeah, because it's backwards. I mean, right now you're considered a citizen if you live here, right? You have the option to vote. You have the option to join the military. You have the option to do all of these things. In this particular film, you're not considered a citizen unless you have done certain things for society. So it's an interesting debate, and I like the fact that we have similar but disparate views here. Disparate views here.
Disparate.
Yeah, I know I can find the word if I just think hard enough. Like, scratch it. So it's good because I think conversations like this are important, and it's good to have a conversation without people getting heated and then, getting all political about it either.
Yeah.
It's almost like we're adults talking to each other.
What? That doesn't happen anymore.
I don't
know
that
what
far.
you're
Come on
talking
now.
about.
So
Them's fighting words, mister.
let's talk bugs, guys. So the bugs in this, to me, are, in the beginning at least, are a throwaway enemy. They remind me of zombies in zombie films, because when they're killed, you're not upset about it, right? Bugs, if you have to kill bugs in real life, like roaches or ants or whatever in your house, you're not sitting there mourning every single death. And the same thing happens in zombie flicks. Even though they were once people, now they're brains, wandering around trying to eat you. Yeah, they're the faceless horde of disposable enemies. They do a nice little flip on that towards the end of this film, obviously, but how do you guys feel about the fact that they decided to make the enemy bugs and the way this whole thing starts? So Ben, you look like you're winding up there, so I'm going to go ahead and toss it to you.
Thank you. I remember consciously thinking that the choice of the enemy being bugs was very deliberate to make the enemy easy to hate, and to make it so that we don't have any level of sympathy or bonding with the enemy. The enemy is very clearly, unequivocally the bad guy. Mm-hmm. And it seemed to me like the writer in the movie and the author originally Heinlein, it seems to me to be a clear choice in order to not have moral ambiguity surrounding it's okay to hate the enemy because they're just definitionally bad.
Right. Do you feel like they did that as a mirror to the way people historically have been portrayed as less than human, without having to actually do that? Because to me, it feels like this is what you would say people were, as they were less than bugs.
They're not even bugs. They're not even human. They're just animals. Yes.
Right.
We've heard, okay. Even within our own lifetimes, we've heard that again and again and again.
I'm pretty sure that I heard that within the past week from some politicians somewhere. So it's not that far removed from us as we'd like to believe, but yeah.
Well then, what's your take on it, Tanya? Did it matter that they used bugs as the enemy?
I feel like a lot of directors choose to do, even with the zombie thing, it's a good way for us as humans to examine ourselves through the medium in a way that isn't quite as uncomfortable. Because everyone thinks, oh, well, if I were in that position, I would never do anything like that, but who knows? You might actually be like a raging asshole deep inside and you just don't know it yet because you haven't had the opportunity to be so. But I think that it allows the director and the writer to tackle issues that would not be tackleable otherwise.
Right.
If you completely separate it out from like an actual human being.
Well, it's interesting because one of the themes I see prevalent in this film is that their life, the bug life, has no value, right? They are something that they've propped up to galvanize the populace of Earth. And that's going to lead me into something else that I've picked up watching this recently, which I'm not going to talk about this second, but I will get to it. But also the soldiers. their lives seem to have no value to the state either. They just throw them in to be completely ripped apart by these bugs. Here's like 6 soldiers shooting hundreds and hundreds of bullets into one bug to kill it. And the next one comes along, skewers somebody, rips them apart, and then they move on, and then now you're promoted, you're replacing so and so, and now you're repeating the exact same things they were saying. And I think it's a commentary on war in that regard, where you're dispensable and you can be replaced immediately. What are your feelings on that, Ben?
I thought that came through very clearly in the film, is that the individual warfighter is a number. Their unit mates, they get to know each other, they consider each other people, but the other individuals higher up in the chain of command who have to make big decisions about masses of troops, by necessity, in order to conduct war, they have to remove themselves from thinking about the individual lives. And I thought the movie did a good job of showing that.
How about you, Tanya? What do you think about that?
I feel like it also absolves leadership of needing to come up with strategies that are actually going to keep their soldiers alive. Like, I was watching the movie, and you have these crazy, super powerful bugs who are huge in numbers, and yet you're using like OG infantry fighting tactics for the most part. That doesn't really seem like a well-balanced fight, and you would think that whoever was in charge would have recognized that and sort of adjusted to that, but they did not. But again, that speaks to sort of the brilliance of this film, because if you are completely disregarding like the life of an enemy, so to the point where you're teaching your children to step on the little things that look like them, then you do not care about the lives of your own people, even though they're citizens.
So I think that's perfectly put. And I think that's going to lead me to the thing I was going to say before, because I was realizing as I'm watching this, they're sending these people to this planet. They could nuke the planet, but they can't nuke the planet because they need something, right? Yet, why not? You could completely eradicate these bugs. Now, one thing that we notice when we're watching this, the only thing that we see the bugs put into space is the plasma, right? They shoot the plasma out at the ships, and at first they think it's some kind of light show from the planet or whatever, and then their ships start getting blown apart. Sounds like faulty intelligence to me, but whatever. These bugs look very landlocked, like they're not on other planets. They haven't left this planet, which begs the question, how are they launching asteroids 20,000 light years away to Earth? And that makes me feel like it's all manufactured by the Earth government to promote the idea that the state needs an enemy to keep the soldiers in play. I don't know what you guys thought of this. Tanya, it looks like you are winding up, so I'll let you take it.
Thank you. So yes, I agree with everything you just said about really needing that enemy and feeding that propaganda, like you must hate, and because that feeds the war machine. It keeps it going. It gives you new bodies for the grinder. But they do sort of specify in the film in passing that the system is a complete system. Like they are actually part of a system on the other side of our galaxy. Yeah. And the whole reason that the asteroid was flung into Earth was because that Mormon colony went to some planet that they thought was uninhabited, but there were already bugs there. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of what started this. That's what I got. That's the impression that I got anyway, is what started everything kind of in motion.
Right. Don't they go to that Mormon colony later on in the film? And you see all the ripped up bodies everywhere.
They do, but that the film in a lot of ways I think was shot out of order, or things that you see in the film are out of order.
Yeah, I question it because you never see the bugs in space ever in the film. They can launch their plasma into space, but nothing else seems to be out there, which makes me wonder, how are these asteroids getting launched? And that makes me suspicious, especially with the distance one side of the galaxy to the other. Do you realize how many light years it would take for those asteroids to get to Earth, which means that the bugs would have had to have launched them long before this war ever happened, before they even knew humans existed.
Thousands of years ago.
Yeah. So to me, I mean, obviously the citizens are not, taught critical thinking beyond what the state wants them to think. My first question would be, how did they do that? But that's me, right? And obviously it's not my first question, because the first time I watched the film, I didn't have that question, but it was after subsequent viewings that I went, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. How are they launching these things from 20,000 light years away, and it's somehow hitting at the right time? They have technology, these bugs? What's going on? I don't know. What do you guys think? That's where I sit with it. It was one of those things that I could not answer when I was watching it, and I was curious to know if you guys had an explanation of how that was possible, or if it's purposely left ambiguous.
I don't know. I didn't question it, and now I'm questioning everything. It honestly never occurred to me as I watched the movie. I just took it as at face value, but perhaps I should not have. I don't know. I'm curious to see what our viewers think. So if you're watching this video and you have a take, let's hear it in the comments.
Yeah.
I did notice the 20,000 light year thing, and I didn't start thinking government conspiracy. My first thought was, okay, either the writer decided it wasn't important enough to address, or possibly, although in the case of Heinlein, I don't really think he wasn't aware of the fact that light years meant such vast distances that it would take thousands of years to get here.
That is possible.
So it could be that he was maybe thinking that there was some level of shenaniganating. That's a totally real word. Shenaniganating. On the part of the Terran government. Because I don't have any good idea that they gave us any explanation for in the movie of how the bugs managed to move these giant asteroids 20,000 light years. That was one of those things I decided, in order to keep watching the movie and see how the story plays out, I'm letting that one go.
Gotcha.
Even though my math and science brain is shrieking, not effing possible.
Right. Well, I mean, it kind of goes back to what Tanya touched on. My whole, I guess you could call it conspiracy theory. I didn't really look at it as conspiracy theory, and I rarely jump to conspiracy as my first go-to. I just felt like maybe that was subliminally hinted at because they didn't address it, and I was curious if you guys felt that way. But I mean, if you look at the merciless conditioned nature of the people in the Terran Federation, and it's a reflection of the government, and really when you get down to it, who cares who the aggressor is, right? The bugs, I feel like, have a much more moral high ground because they're more living in defense of their lives and themselves, and I feel is like what Verhoeven was trying to show, is that really the bugs are kind of the victims here. They're the ones that, well, I say we, the Terran Federation, are going after to mercilessly subjugate and destroy, but not right away. Long enough that we can drag out a war and reinforce the ideals of our society, which, are we talking about his name, Razchek? Michael Ironside's character, Professor Razchek. So he epitomizes this fascist state ideal, right? And he's the instructor at the school. So here's yet another example of how a guy in the military is also educating kids and becoming a mentor in the worst possible way to some of these people, right? Johnny Rico, he becomes his mentor. I'm reading that right, correct? So it makes me feel, when I watch this, that this is a concerted effort to create this enemy and create a war that keeps the state like viable. It keeps people not questioning why they're doing what they're doing. So I don't know. How do you feel about that? Anybody, go ahead.
I think it's entirely possible that Heinlein may have been thinking exactly that. For a number of reasons within the story itself, but I'm also looking at the fact that Heinlein's novel was published in '59, which was so he would have been writing it only 10 years after Orwell's 1984
right
was written and published.
Yeah, okay.
So it's entirely possible Heinlein read Orwell and thought, okay, yeah, this is pretty ripe for ideas, and I can write my own take on a lot of these themes. And while I didn't, when I watched the film, both younger and also rewatching for the episode just this last week, my brain didn't go to the same degree of is the enemy really a bad guy? Who is the aggressor? Does it matter who the aggressor is? My brain didn't necessarily go right there when I was watching the films, but I certainly cannot sit here and say, no, that's not correct.
Right. I mean, it feels like they have no recourse but to fight back. Watching it now, and now, of course, we have this show, so we take things apart and examine them a little bit more, and it's interesting because I watch films differently now because of this, and that made me sit there and think about, well, wait a minute, what about these bugs? You do sort of feel a little bit for them later on, especially when Doogie Howser shows up, Dr. Carl Jenkins, and
creepy Doogie Howser.
Isn't he creepy?
Oh my gosh.
He's part of the brain trust, right? The guys that make the decisions. He sends Rico's group into that slaughterhouse and says, I have to make decisions like this all the time. Well, what other kind of decisions do you guys make? It begs the question again, and it leads me back to my initial confusion about, okay, are these bugs launching these asteroids, or is it the Terran government once again making tough decisions? Right? It's food for thought. Even if we can't determine if that's really what's going on, it's food for thought.
Yeah, I have a couple things to add. I know I have not read Starship Troopers, the book, but my understanding of Heinlein's vision was that it was very different from what Verhoeven ended up doing for the movie. They are two completely opposite, polar opposite ideas. And I think for Heinlein, it was more about personal responsibility, and that's kind of the lens through which he viewed things. That's my understanding from reading what I was able to read. But talking about Doogie, one thing that struck me throughout the film with him is that every time you saw his character as the movie went on, he was more and more hardened, more sort of dark bags under his eyes. Every bit of screen time he had, he was just a little bit more devolved, and a little bit better uniformed at the same time, which I thought was a really nice juxtaposition. But yeah, who knows what dastardly deeds his unit was up to.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Let's talk about scenes that kind of stood out to us, what we felt were important scenes in the film. I've got one that I think was disguised as one thing, but turned out to be probably one of the more important scenes in the film. But does anything jump to you guys, to your minds, as to what scene really played a pivotal role in the film that added a level of depth to it?
For me, the one scene that tends to stand out every time I think about this movie again is the scene when they have here's one of those spoilers that we alluded to, when they have captured the brain bug. and dragged it up to the surface, and the Sky Marshal or General or Grand Poobah, whatever they call him, directs Doogie Howser to figure out what the brain bug is thinking. And creepy hair Doogie reaches out and mind melds with the brain bug and looks back, and there's this intensely unsettling grin on his face as he says, "It's afraid."
Right. And everybody cheers.
And that changes the entire tone of the movie for me.
That's what I meant by it flips it on its head later on.
Yeah. Is that yes, we could try to say to ourselves, well, that's a measure of relief for us that they can be afraid, and that means that possibly we can overcome. But the smile that Neil Patrick Harris delivered was just a little too sinister and creepy for me.
That is on the line of Dr. Horrible, not Doogie Howser. Just because, I got to throw Dr. Horrible in there because if you haven't seen it, see it. Yeah. Tanya, did you have a scene that sticks out to you that you felt was pivotal, or added to the depth of the story that you were watching?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, what I loved most about this movie was the more overt commentary that existed within the film, like the film reels. Would you like to know more? I think all of those were utter brilliance. I love the debate between the two opposing experts on the TV, and he's like, yeah. I refuse. I find the idea that a bug can think offensive. Like that guy cracked me up like to all end.
He's a typical social media troll.
Like hilarious. Right. Yeah, like that with the punditry was great. I thought that just the commentary on our sort of political and mediascape was really spot on. Even 20 years ago, it still holds up as something that I can look at today and go, yeah, he's not wrong.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've seen RoboCop, the whole idea of like commercials and the media inclusion into the story. It's very Paul Verhoeven, right? It's one of the reasons I really enjoy him as a director and love watching his films, is because there's always this element of satire or even irony in the commercials, and it's great. It's absolutely wonderful, and it does add another level to his films. So the thing that stuck out to me that added a whole lot of depth and meaning to this film is something that on the surface people could say, oh, well, they just did this so they could get some titties on the film, and show some naked people. And that would have been the shower scene. And why I think that if people are feeling that way about it, they're probably wrong, is because this is a completely libido-less shower scene. There's no overt sexual anything going on. They're discussing why they joined the military, why they joined up. And everybody's got a different reason for why they're there, right? Oh, Rico joined because of a girl, or woo, and one person joined because they wanted to run for political office, but they couldn't unless they are a citizen. And so you get the stories from all these people, why they're all in there. And they've all got this sort of delusional sense of righteousness about them, right? Like, oh, I did it for this reason or that reason. But the underlying thing that kind of gets me while I'm watching that is that it doesn't matter what your background, where you came from, what your desires or goals are, you're all in a level playing field. All of them are naked. All of them are in the shower scene together. It doesn't matter if you're a man, a woman, rich, poor, a student, this, that, or the other, you are all expendable. And that's to me, that added so much gravitas to the story, and I think was a brilliant scene in this film. What do you guys think?
Yeah, that's funny. Because your take on their attitudes was completely the polar opposite of the take that I had, which was one of complete naivete on their parts. I felt like this was just that was just the way things were, and so this is what they were doing to get to what they wanted, as opposed to like, I'm awesome because I'm going to be a citizen. It just felt like that was part of their normal lives.
Right, but you can have a delusional sense of righteousness and still be naive. I mean, there are plenty of people who have that exist in this world today.
Yeah, and well, that's true. But I did not feel the righteousness in that moment. I just didn't.
Okay, maybe not so much in that moment, but I mean, it's the same characters. So when I was probably taking that and transitioning it into the shower scene where things are so very level. So if that's what I did, I apologize. But no, I don't apologize. What I talk about.
I forgive you, Daniel. But also too, I think another thing I really liked about that scene was the fact that that was a very egalitarian moment. Because it was completely non-sexual. It was just every gender together, just chilling, doing their shower, doing their, daily routine. No one thought two craps about it. It just was, like that was a very striking moment for that reason for me. But
well, yeah, go ahead. Sir.
The only thing that I would say regarding the any sexualization of that scene is that the only people thinking about naked bits were in the audience.
Probably, yeah.
And so as far as that debate, if people are still banging on that drum, that's on them.
Yeah. Oh my God. So I totally think that we should have like our little subtitle of our title be Seymour butts. Because there were a lot of butts in this movie. Starship Troopers, Seymour butts.
Starship Troopers. Starship Troopers.
Kudos
Seymour
to Ben
butts.
for the Tropers.
Starship Troopers.
Yeah, and it was filled with trope after trope after trope. But I found that actually endearing in this film. A lot of times it's annoying, right? In this film, it felt like you almost needed those tropes because the story was so what?
Yeah, I felt like it the story was basically trope after trope after trope strung together, but it felt to me like that was a deliberate choice and they were not trying to make it seem like anything else. And so it felt like, here, we're going to present you the story with this as our format. And they made it work. It's not that they snuck it in. The tropes are very clear, but
oh yeah, I mean, think about just the casting alone. You've got all these like very Aryan looking people from Buenos Aires, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know about you guys, but did that sort of, where is it? Buenos Aires? It's South America where like they say all the Nazis kind of ran off to, right? So is that why that's done?
In Buenos Aires, Buenos Aires was in the book. And so I think that's why Verhoeven kept it. But he even had said in some interviews that it was really a commentary specifically about the US. So then why not change the city to like Omaha or San Diego or something? Like Buenos Aires was noticeably lacking in Argentinians, which I felt for me was we're moving into could have done without that.
But that's got to be intentional,
but yeah,
right? If you're talking about fascism and that whole Aryan ideal, you don't want to use real Argentinians and people from Buenos Aires because now you're kind of insulting them. See, at least this way, what you're doing is you're taking that and transplanting it into there and saying Aryan ideals.
It's better to insult America, I guess.
Well, I feel like that. I don't know if it felt like they're insulting America. I felt like they're insulting just fascist ideals in general. But yeah, I guess there's enough of that in America that you could make that argument anyway. Yeah.
And that's all I had to say about that.
Oh my God. So, before we move on to any other segments, are there things about this film that that I didn't bring up that you'd like to talk about before we head on to different discussion?
Things that I had to talk about pretty much covered. One little thing, a book that I read in high school probably around the same time that I also read Starship Troopers, was another one that was written in '85. Ender's Game had a lot of parallels in the overall plot, not in the details, of course, but I mean the nameless, faceless, easy to hate enemy is space bugs.
Mm-hmm.
And they came and they tried to destroy Earth, so now we're going to destroy them. And the ferocious training environment and how it chews up the humanity of people who enter.
Fair enough. Tanya, was there anything else that you felt needed to be talked about with this?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head, but if it comes to me later, I'll make a point to backtrack and derail the whole thing. Sorry.
Sounds good.
Okay, awesome.
we blame you. Yeah. So, did you catch that? Remember this, Ben? There was a segment we had called "Did you catch that?" And I think it happened in one episode before. So I'm reintroducing it because there was a professor in the school, played by a Golden Girl, Rue McClanahan. And she's the one who says the bugs are superior and admires the bugs. I thought that was really cool. They just are missing out. They should have had Rose. Should have had Dorothy.
I didn't quite catch that it was Rue McClanahan. That's awesome.
She looks different. They really dressed her up some for that role.
Yeah.
But
I remember thinking there was
Gargoyle
something
glasses.
familiar about her, but I totally did not recognize.
Cool enough. All right. Anybody else have did you catch that? Did you guys catch anything? Anything stick out to you?
Not a particular did you catch that thing, no.
All right. I'll do all the work.
Can I say sick burn?
Oh.
Sick burn!
All right. Oh, wow. Look at how bright that got, because this next segment, is very bright because the page that I have opened is very bright. So now all of a sudden I look like I belong in the cast.
I know that, dude.
Today's actor that we're going to focus on as, yeah, I know that dude, is none other than the son of the great and wonderful Nick Nolte. I mean, Gary Busey, Jake Busey. My experience with Jake Busey and where I know him from is The Frighteners with Michael J. Fox. Absolutely awesome film. I see Ben looking at, to the side in the back of his head. Wait, have I seen this? You haven't?
No,
because we've had this discussion before, and it's absolutely wonderful. You should see The Frighteners. He plays a homicidal maniac in that film, and he's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So the other thing I know him from, of course, is this film. Where do you guys know Jake Busey from? Tanya, usually I go to Ben first. I'm going to go to you. Where do you know Jake Busey from?
Yes. So I had actually forgotten that he was in The Frighteners, even though that was the very first thing that I had seen him in. When I remember seeing him for the first time, it was actually in Contact with Jodie Foster.
See, I forgot that he was in Contact, so there you go.
Yeah, and he's just got he's got a very specific look to him and a very specific coloring, similar to Neil
Patrick Harris?
No.
Neil
Armstrong.
McDonough?
Oh, Neil McDonough, thank you. That same sort of that person who you always see because their coloring is so
distinctive.
So I remember seeing him a lot of other stuff, but Contact is the first thing that I remember him from. But he's actually been in a lot.
He really has. But before we get to that, I want to know where Ben knows him from.
I have seen him in so many things. Mainly the things that I remembered him from. I didn't remember that he was in Contact, even though I did see it. I remembered him more from showing up in various TV shows that I've seen, like Jeremiah, The Mentalist, Psych, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., NCIS, Stranger Things.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Stranger Things, definitely.
But where I know him from, the first time I ever took notice of Jake Busey was in Starship Troopers. Was in this movie here, and I remember.
You bastard!
Oh, we're keeping that, man. I remember thinking to myself, wait, who the heck is that? That can't be. That's not. No, he's way too young. I had never known Gary Busey had a kid. But I sat there thinking to myself, there's no way on earth this is not Gary Busey's child.
Right. No, actually, I really like Jake Busey. He's pretty exceptional. And the other thing that he'd been in that didn't come to me right away was Enemy of the State.
Oh, yes!
So
now I can't remember whether I've seen it in the State.
Oh my God, Ben, great movie. You should watch it.
Is that
Will
Gene
Smith.
Hackman?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
Will Smith, Gene Hackman, yeah. And yeah, it was.
I think I've seen clips, but I haven't seen the whole thing.
All right.
I should change that.
Well, let's talk about his background a little bit. He's born in 1971, so a true Gen X actor.
Yay! Let's hear it for Gen X.
His most prominent roles. This is from the wiki. I'm not, I didn't go to several pages to look up all of this stuff, but obviously it's here. So among his most prominent roles have been the serial killer Johnny Bartlett in 1996, The Frighteners, Ace Levy in 1997, Starship Troopers, Kyle Brenner in 2001's Tomcats, Aidan Tanner in 2014-2016 TV series From Dusk Till Dawn, the series, and Sean H. Keyes in the Predator franchise, which I missed entirely. He was in that?
Okay.
I don't remember it, but I'm sure he was.
I think he was in the Stinker, not Predator, but the Stinker, the Predator, which was part of my top 5 most hated
That's right.
things of all time. Yeah.
Oh dear. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, as we mentioned before, he's the son of actor Gary Busey. He spent his childhood on film sets and touring with bands in which his father sometimes played, such as Leon Russell, Willie Nelson, and Little Feat. So there you go.
Yeah.
His first film was his first picture debut was in the 1978 crime film Straight Time with his father Gary. No nepotism going along there, huh? With Dustin Hoffman, Teresa Russell. So his 2 most notable appearances are as the murderous religious fanatic opposite Jodie Foster in Contact, and as a smart mouth soldier Ace Levy in Starship Troopers. So there you go. Just for you, Ben. All right.
Making mistakes when we intend to mistake the name.
And I do remember from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but I had to do that was after looking at this. There's a huge list of the films he's been in, but most of anything that you would know, we've already called out. There's a lot of roles in what we might consider B films. On television, he was on Tales from the Crypt. I guess he had his own role, starring role in Shasta McNasty back in 1999. Jeremiah, The Twilight Zone, Charmed, From Dusk Till Dawn, the series, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Stranger Thing, LA's Finest, Swamp Thing, and Mr. Robot. So he's been in a lot of stuff. He's done a couple of video games where he's got credits to Spec Ops: The Line, XCOM 2, War of the Chosen, and Predator Hunting Grounds, which apparently Tanya has not played. Anyway, there we go. A little bit about Jake Busey. Doesn't have a whole lot of information here, and I kind of like that. The last couple of guys we did were just books and books and books of information on how much they've done. It's kind of refreshing to have a guy who's done some pretty cool things, but not so much that we'd be here for another hour. So there you go. Hey, watch my face dim as I get rid of this page. Ooh. There you go. Anyway. Oh.
There's the dim.
There's the dim. It dimmed with my personality.
Could have done without that.
This is a film that, it's one of those give or take films. You're gonna love things, you're gonna hate things, I ended up loving most of this film, so don't have a whole lot of takeaways of things that I could have done without, especially within the vein of satire. I kind of liked most of the elements because of that, but I want to hear you guys' takes. What could you have done without, Ben?
There is a moment when I think Carmen Ibanez is taking her first time pulling the giant mega ship away from the starbase dock, and she decides to poke at the leadership by scaring the patooties out of everybody by not disengaging the fuel lines until they're about to rip themselves out of the station.
Could have done without that.
I can't think of any leader anywhere who would have let her get away with that without absolutely reaming her, or endangering billions of dollars of material and all the personnel. There's so much. It was very much a Hollywood lipstick and pretty hair, so snotty girl gets away with it.
Yeah, and especially
not snotty, but smug.
Especially in a fascist military where they whip people for endangering people's lives and things like that. So
yeah,
I would kind of agree with you on that. I'm shocked because it's not one I would have initially thought of.
Yeah,
good call, Ben.
That moment bugs the crap out of me every time.
Tanya, I know you don't have any I could have done without that's right?
Two. So the first one, I already kind of touched on it, so I'm not going to harp on it again, but Buenos Aires, lots and lots and lots of like super white people. Just a little weird.
Could have done without that.
It kind of bothered me a little bit, but that's fine. Verhoeven, you do your thing. So my other thing is this, and it also involves Carmen, oddly enough. This is when they're going, and it's her and Xander, the pilot, and they're doing the late night shift, and they're flying, and here comes the asteroid, and they rush to avoid it, and they just make it, but it rips off their comms, and so now there's this asteroid hurtling towards Earth. There's no way that they can notify anybody. No one is like freaking out about it, and then the captain is like, well, I have one hell of a crew.
Could have done without that.
There's an asteroid hurtling towards your effing home planet. Like, aren't you gonna want to do something about that? They did not give a flying F, and that really, really bothered me.
Okay, conspiracy time.
I could have done without it.
Conspiracy time here. Since, we brought up that this could potentially be a conspiracy thing, I don't think they were supposed to survive that asteroid. I think Neil Patrick Harris, little Nazi character, made a decision that we're going to send this asteroid at Earth, take out Argentina, and we'll hit their ship on the way through so they can't warn Earth.
Wow,
I'm just throwing that out there.
You have a dark brain.
I'm a big brain bug. Come here.
You are purposefully poking at all the internet trolls, aren't you?
I'm going to suck their brains out. All right. So your other one you'd already mentioned, right? So they're all right. I'll go to my could have done without that. And I hate to say this, but Dizzy's death.
Could have done without that.
Why? It was so predictable. It was so pointless. And I know that they always want to make you feel for the main character by killing their love interest or killing the person that matters to them. Oh, come on. I'm so tired of it. Every Van Damme film is, you killed I must kill you back, And it's such a tired trope. And I just felt like, Johnny's motivated enough already. You don't need to do this on top of it. And I know, again, the lies being pointless or whatever. It just bugged me because this was a great character in this film, and I just felt it was so pointless. Why would you need to do this? So I could have done without that. And you can make the argument, well, and they needed to have something that hits you emotionally at this point in the film. Sure, okay, but to me, it just made me angry. It just made me angry.
I
Fair.
totally get you on that. My take on it was very similar. It was, for me, it was totally unnecessary from a storytelling standpoint, but I went back to, they are trying to include every Hollywood military trope.
Could have done without that.
So this has to be in there.
This leads me to another actual I could have done without that. Holy crap, I just realized it as I'm thinking about that death.
Aha.
Well, at least I got to have you.
Could have done without that.
What?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I know that was pretty much her motivation through most of the film, but come on, man. Yeah.
There was a heavy dose of cheese there.
Yeah.
Smidge.
Okay. Moving on. Because I just, it makes me angry. That's such a good character, you know, and she had so much more to her that her whole life didn't have to revolve around Johnny Rico. And I felt like that was such a cop-out kind of thing to do. Moving on. We're on our way to the Academy of Popped.
It looks like a lamp. Well, it is a lamp, you nincompoop, but it's a major award.
So we have best performance and worst performance. And unbeknownst to all of our viewers here, well, maybe if you've watched a couple of these now, you know we vote before we start recording the segment. So we had 3 nominees for best performance. And those nominees are Dina Meyer, Jake Busey, and Clancy Brown. And the winner is, drum roll, should have heard Tanya's. I might actually copy Tanya's from the last episode and put it in here.
God damn you, Daniel.
I have the power of the edits. And the winner is Dina Meyer. I think we all felt that she was exceptional in that role and probably one of the standout performances. Absolutely. Anybody want to add something now?
Yes. She was the character that stood out to me most the first time I saw the film. When I thought about the film after many years of having not watched it, she was the first person that came to mind. Just well acted. She had really great little micro expressions on her face in certain moments that the other characters didn't, or the other actors didn't really exhibit in any way. But yeah, she was the most memorable performance of the entire movie.
I agree. Ben, how about you?
Same thing. For me, the thing that stood out about Diz is that she was the one who struck me as the closest to being a 3D human being.
Right. And that's another reason it irritated me so much when at least I got to have you, was her dying words. Because you now have taken away what was potentially a 3-dimensional character in this film. And maybe that was the point. I don't know.
Might have been.
All right. Well, that puts us on to our worst performance. And we have 2 nominees here. The first one is Christopher Curry, who played Johnny Rico's father. And then we have Denise Richards, who played Ibanez. And we have a split vote here. I mean, there's only 3 of us, but 2 votes went to the loser, right? Do we say the winner or do we say the loser on this? Worst
The
performance.
winner.
Yes.
They're still winning.
You're still winning worst performer. You're
They're
getting an
winning
award.
worst performer.
They're
yes.
winning an award.
We have an
It's
award
like
winning
a
a title
Razzie.
they can put on their business
that's
card.
going to pop up over here. Right here. There'll be a award for our worst performance.
It's beautiful. Really. It's
I haven't put
gorgeous.
it there yet.
You want one on your bookshelf. You do.
Oh, okay. You know what it
Yeah.
looks like. Well, anyway, Christopher Curry won the Worst Performance Award. And we did have some dissent here. First off, I'm going to just say that I found Christopher Curry's performance the most wooden and ridiculous in the film. He just was so over the top and overly expressive. You know, there's a point where you can be expressive and impactful, and then there's a point where you move into the realm of ridiculous, and that's where I felt he was at. Ben, you were the other person who voted for Christopher Curry. Why did he come across to you as a worse performance?
For me, he seemed a lot like, I think the way I phrased it was a watered soup version of Kurtwood Smith as the always angry, disapproving father figure.
That 70s show, huh?
Now, I mean, yes, that 70s show.
I need to do a cut in here of him saying, "You dumbass."
Dumbass.
Yep. And Christopher Curry just it just felt like a weak version of that. And I think part of it may have been that Rico's dad is such a small character. There's very
he
little in
is
the way
kind
of
of a
screen time
throwaway
or
character,
lines.
and I don't.
Yeah.
I guess I mean that literally, but
so I know he wasn't given a whole lot to do anything with, but I think as a result he didn't do a whole lot with it.
yeah, and he is encouraging him to come home right before the asteroid hit. I mean, good job, Dad.
And he wanted to send him on vacation to Zagama Beach.
Yeah, which I'm
Right
guessing is some
before- I
kind of
guess, like,
nude
it got-
beach or some
And,
kind
and
of.
it got destroyed. Like, it ain't there anymore. Like, oh, yeah, it's a good thing you didn't go.
You know, it's at Zagama Beach. Nudge, nudge. So, Tanya, you were the dissenting vote here.
I
And
was.
you chose Denise Richards. What's your rationale for that?
I did. So the main reason is I think each of their performances, and this was hard, each of their performances were kind of equally not great. And we have talked about this before. I think they were both directed to that place. So you can't
Right.
really put all the blame on the actor necessarily.
Agreed.
When I rewatched, because I watched Starship Troopers twice in the past week just to kind of get a better feel for everything. And when I watched it the second time, I was like, you know, this Christopher Curry dad reminds me of like a 1950s propaganda-y, infomercial-y dad. And that was what he was acting to. And I get the feeling that that was also what he was directed to, in the same way that Denise Richards was probably directed to her. Like, just do your Colgate smile and remember all the time. Doesn't remember how do you say your lines. Just remember, you're pretty. Like, that's the first thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah, always
Like,
do that
that's
head
the first
dip
thing.
and the smile and the look
Yeah.
up with the eyes this direction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, there was that moment too. But
I think that's why I forgave her, because I felt that was intentional.
Yeah, that's true. But I feel like the delivery, at least with the father, was a little more impassioned. There was a moment where
Oh, I'll say.
when Carmen and Johnny were
You're not
talking
gonna
about
go there.
the asteroid on Buenos Aires, and she goes, you know, whenever I start thinking about it, I just can't stop crying. And then she was so flat. There was not a single emotion anywhere on her face, in her lips, in her
I'll give you
eyes,
that one.
her
I'll give you that
furrowed
one.
brow, nothing. So that was why she edged out Christopher Curry for me.
All right. Well, Christopher Curry won, I guess you could say. But
Congratulations.
thank you for your input on that, because, hey, I mean, she was a nominee, and for a good reason. Yeah, so we have a very quick segment we're going to do right now, just because. And it's the Weasley Nobleman segment. Very quick. Patrick Muldoon wins. What's really funny about that is Ben and I know somebody named Patrick Muldoon. So when the name comes up, you know, I have a hard time seeing this dude's face.
Yeah.
Seeing Patrick
mean-
Muldoon.
I mean, for me, I've known our Patrick Muldoon for almost 35 years now.
I'd say I've known him for about 25.
Yeah, so in my
So
brain, it's cemented as this friend I have.
yeah. All right, we're gonna move on to the next segment. Trivia. Are you guys ready for some trivia?
Oh, yeah.
Starship Troopers trivia. When the adaptation of Robert Heinlein's beloved sci-fi novel was released 20 years ago this week, this obviously was from much earlier. Anyway, it did so at the box office, since it looked just like a dumb, militaristic, rapidly acted humans versus aliens thriller. In fact, it was a satire on militarism and fascism, disguised as a $105 million Hollywood blockbuster. So they're saying it was one of the most expensive art movies ever made, and few viewers or critics got the joke. 2 decades later, Starship Troopers is remembered for jump-starting the then movie careers of Casper Van Dien and Denise Richards, for its still impressive special effects, and for launching a franchise that's included several sequels and TV episodes, not to mention a possible future reboot. Plus, it has a cult of fans who do recognize the movie's sharp, bitter satire.
May I ask a question? This
You may.
is totally interrupting trivia, but what do you guys feel about the reboot? The possible reboot?
I mean,
Where do you land on that?
see, that's the thing, like, they rebooted Total Recall as well, right? Another Verhoeven, like, film that I absolutely love. And I didn't like the reboot.
They're
And
talking about
the
rebooting
reboot was-
this movie?
Yeah, the reboot of Total Recall was much more like the book than the initial film by Paul Verhoeven was, but I liked the Arnold Schwarzenegger Total Recall. I thought it was great. Wasn't a big fan of the reboot.
Yeah, I think a reboot of this movie I would have to see before I would say, oh, I think it'll be great, or no, that'll be terrible. I would want to see what they would do with it.
All right.
I mean, I love how this one it is so deliberately evoking the feel of the World War II nuclear age nationalistic propaganda films.
Yeah, I just wonder if they could get the satire right. You know? That's because of what this film is. I think it would be very difficult to get it to work the same way. You'd almost
Yeah.
end up, endorsing what you didn't necessarily intend to endorse.
Right. But it's like, would they reboot the film, or would they make it more off of the book? I don't know. I mean, I feel like there's a
Exactly.
million different directions
Yeah, it depends.
that
I
reboot
mean-
could go.
I guess I would say how I felt about it after they did it. I mean, I kind of take that stance on more these days, because things are going to get rebooted whether or not you have any
Whether or
say
not
or
they
input
should.
to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like Babylon 5, I don't mind them rebooting that. You got half the cast is dead. It's 30 years later. What, about 40? How many years later? 30. Well, it's 30 some years now.
Yeah.
And you can't pick up the story the same way, right? And they've tried to do spin-offs. People are like, oh, we want to see more in the Babylon 5 universe. Well, they tried that a couple times and it didn't work. So you need to move it forward and capture a younger audience. And so that works for me for Babylon 5. Does it work for me for things like, I don't know, the movie Psycho, where they rebooted it and shot it shot for shot? It's like, why did you even make this? Or, hey, let's look at Halloween. There's a reboot that was horribly terrible, right? Rob Zombie redid it, and it just lost all of the things about it that made it unique and special. So I think everything depends on the context. Some things I think absolutely you can reboot that, but then there's some things that you really should just stay away from, because unless you can do it better, why are you going to bother? I don't know. Oh yeah, back to trivia.
Sorry.
No, you're good. All right. Verhoeven and screenwriter Ed Neumeyer didn't want to retell Heinlein's narrative without adding a layer of irony, as they had a decade earlier when they made RoboCop. Verhoeven, who grew up in Nazi-occupied Holland, had vivid memories of life under fascism during World War II. He also had vivid memories of the classic 1954 version of alien invasion thriller War of the Worlds. In fact, Verhoeven so disliked Heinlein's novel that he read only a couple of chapters and then made I think it's Neumeier, but it's Neumeier, if you say it in German, I guess, tell him the rest of the story. So he didn't even want to finish reading the book. Just tell me what the rest of the story is. Filmmakers made their satirical intent clearest in the movie's interactive newsreel propaganda segments. These included slogans and images of military pageantry inspired by Leni Riefenstahl's notorious Hitler documentary, Triumph of the Will, as well as Nazi-style uniforms and architecture. Let me try that again. Mark Wahlberg and James Marsden were both up for the lead role of Johnny Rico, but Verhoeven ultimately picked a relative unknown, Van Dien, in part because he looked like he could have starred in a German war propaganda film. It's not clear why everyone in the movie's Buenos Aires looks so Nordic, but that may be another of Verhoeven's subtle gags, a reference to Argentina's reputation as a haven for fugitive Nazis. Van Dien and several other cast members, including Richards, were in Beverly Hills 90210 and Melrose Place, which proved apt training for the campy acting style Verhoeven was going for. Hey, I think some of these trivia questions are answering questions we had in the show.
Yeah.
The most famous cast member at the time may have been Doogie Howser, MD, and still years away from being known better for his comedic and song and dance talents. When Harris Carl showed up late in the film as an officer wearing an SS-style topcoat, the filmmakers reportedly nicknamed him Doogie Himmler.
Oh
my God.
Oh boy.
That's
I love Neil Patrick Harris. Let me just put that out there right now. One of my favorite people to watch, Dr. Horrible. Again, people, if you haven't seen it. One of the film's most notorious... Sorry, let me try that again. I'm really struggling with these sentences today. Brain bug. One of the film's most notorious moments is the naked co-ed shower scene in the barracks. Verhoeven shot it matter-of-factly to show that the Army of the Future is completely gender-neutral, and that everyone in it is too fixated on war to be thinking about sex. There you go. Still, at least one actor reportedly balked at doing the scene unless Verhoeven and his cameraman, Jost Vacano, went naked as well. Both men complied. As Verhoeven explained later, my cinematographer was born in a nudist colony, and I have no problem with taking my clothes off.
That's a fun bit of trivia.
Good job, Paul Verhoeven. Wow.
That's so funny.
You naked
I
fool.
wonder, did he like? It would be awesome if the actors were naked and he directed it naked, and the cinematographer was also naked, like as they filmed.
That's
like,
what
was
they did.
it done as they filmed,
It was
or
done
did
as
they
they
just
filmed.
like? That's so great. Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't
so-
know if they're like, well, we're just gonna take our clothes off so you can see that we can be naked too. But they literally, the whole thing, they were all naked.
Reportedly, Verhoeven got really upset because when he said cut, that slate board was a little too close.
Dun, dun.
Playing the planet Klendathu was Hell's Half Acre, an area of desolate desert canyons in central Wyoming. Phil
Gorgeous
Tippett,
scenery.
isn't it? And
Yeah.
hey, Wyoming. What do you know about Wyoming? Not much.
There's bugs there.
I don't. There's what?
There's bugs there.
Oh, I'm sure there's lots of bugs. It's not on the par of Australia, but you don't want to mess with that.
Not
bugs.
poison bugs. Just
Somebody saw a bug up on 12. Anyway, most of the time, the actors playing the troops were fighting against nothing, with the bugs to be added in post-production. Verhoeven himself would stand in for the marauding insects, waving a pole or a bullhorn and shouting, "I'm a big bug! I'll kill you!"
Oh, I love it.
For the space battle cruisers, the effect team built a fleet of models, some of them 18 feet long. Animators added explosions and laser fire in post-production. For the scene with a spectacular collision, the filmmakers actually rammed two of the models into each other. One of the reasons the effects still look good today may be that they were used sparingly. Tippett has said there were just 200 effects shots in the movie, a small number by the standard of today's effects-driven blockbusters. When you consider the budget of this film, too, what do they spend all that damn money on? Well, I guess CGI back then, right? Maybe the bugs and the time it took to... the massive amounts of bugs they'd have to put on screen, that's a lot of time, especially with the rendering speed of computers back then. It probably took forever to get all of those bugs to populate on a screen, now that I think of it. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. The filmmakers also reportedly used 17 gallons of fake blood given the movie's extreme carnage. That number also seems unbelievably low. No word on how many gallons of green and orange goo were used to simulate the splattered guts of slain bugs. As progressive as the movie's sexual politics may have been, test audiences weren't ready for the independence showed by Richards' Carmen Ibanez. Early viewers said they disapproved of her tossing Johnny over for Xander and as a career pilot, and they found it hypocritical that Johnny and Carmen would get back together so soon after their respective love interests die. So Verhoeven cut much of Richards' performance in order to downplay her romance with Xander. Interesting. The $105 million production earned back just $55 million in North America and a total of $121 million worldwide. The tepid response came in part because of negative reviews, some of which misperceived the movie as rooting for the Nazi-like tendencies it was spoofing. So don't always trust critics, folks. I mean, we're critics, kind of, but we're good critics. We're on your side.
Now I'm flashing on Joey Suzu.
You
You can trust us.
Our viewers, they're afraid. Despite the movie's weak box office, there have been 4 straight-to-video sequels, including one just this year, as well as a spin-off animated TV series. Now, this says just this year. I don't know when I found these, when this was printed, or not necessarily printed, posted. Anyway, Columbia Pictures announced plans for a remake of Starship Troopers that would be more faithful to Heinlein's novel. There it is. Judging by the Twitter response, fans thought that was a bad idea. And that's what I have for trivia. Fans. What fans? Did they ask you? Did they ask you, Tanya?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so. They didn't ask us.
No.
But no, I think we'd probably agree. And that leaves us with one more segment.
What could it possibly be?
Let's get to poppin'. Dun, 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 dun.
Yay.
Ooh, hey, good dancing, Tanya.
Jazz hands.
That's funny because all that thing you were doing like this, none of that got caught. All that's caught was this.
Oh.
Because the camera
That's
goes
funny.
to you if you're speaking, right? So
Oh.
she was silently dancing and all of you
Oh my
missed it.
gosh. How funny. Wah wah. Oh well. You missed my disco. My awesome disco. You only got to see my jazz hands. Shameful.
Well, disco this way, disco that way. I'm going that way. Ben, how many pops do you give Starship Troopers?
After the disco this way thing, I need a moment. Pops for Starship Troopers. I give this movie a generous 3 pops. It's one, and it's not because I have any necessarily negative feelings towards it, but it's one that, while I can rewatch it, I don't really feel a need to. I guess the best summation is I enjoy remembering it more than actively watching it.
Interesting. All right. Well, Tanya, how many pops do you give Starship Troopers?
Yes. So I'm gonna give Starship Troopers 4 pops. I really appreciated the not so subtle digs and the references to propaganda and all the things that are not so great in the world. I thought that was very cleverly done. I love the cheese. I love the cheese. I can't say enough good things about cheese just in general. So that's why it gets 4. It does not get 5 for me because, similar to what Ben said, I can't watch this movie on repeat. Like, there's certain films that I can, and this is not one of them. But yeah, solid 4 pops. I have great respect for this movie. And
Excellent.
It's fun. So
I too have great respect for this film. The acting was a little bit too on the nose for me at times, which is why it's not getting any more than 4 pops. 4 pops. I really like this film. I can rewatch it. I love the satire. I love the special effects. I love the whole idea. In fact, for years I played a computer game called StarCraft, and one of the enemies were called the Zerg, and I think they were very specifically modeled after these bugs, but they were also modeled kind of after aliens as well. So, and of course, one of the groups you could be were the Terrans.
Yeah.
And I played neither. I played the Protoss. There you go. I absolutely love this. It's just fun for me to watch this story, and every time I watch it, I think of something new. You know, like who's shooting these asteroids if the bugs aren't out in space? You know, things like that. I find something new every time I watch it, which is really cool and pretty incredible that Paul Verhoeven put together a film that is that makes me think that much when on the surface doesn't look like a film that makes you think. So bravo, Mr. Verhoeven. I loved it.
Yay.
So folks, we have a website, poppedpodcast.com, where you can watch our episodes, listen to our episodes, read our funky biographies. You can email us directly. Only my email's on the website, which is daniel@poppedpodcast.com. But both of my co-hosts have emails where you can email them as well. Ben at poppedpodcast.com and Tanya at poppedpodcast.com. They'd love to hear from you. You don't have to send them all to me. But I don't mind. It gives us something to talk about in our popped mail segment. And wow, the last 2 episodes we've had popped mail. It's pretty cool.
Yay.
We do these premieres after we release our episodes on YouTube, where you can chat with us live. I'm actually thinking about trying to do some streaming as well on either Facebook or Instagram while we're doing that. So behind me there might be a camera, you know, showing what I'm looking at. We'll see how that works. It's going to be an experiment, but maybe one of you guys will want to take up something as well. Like if I'm doing Facebook, maybe one of you could do Instagram, or I don't know, or TikTok or whatever. We can try this out. Let's experiment. Why not? What else? We have a Patreon. You can get there through our website, poppodcast.com again. Yeah, remember that. And we're on all the socials. So go find us there. Comment, please. And we really like to hear from you. We really like to interact with you. And I'm not just saying that.
no.
Tanya, you got anything else to add?
You know, Daniel, I think I am just too pooped to pop.
Ben?
I think I'm all popped out.
Well, on that note, we're off. And we're leaving as well.